Just a heads up, this episode contains some discussions about suicide. If it brings up anything for you, please call Lifeline on 13 11 14.
What I learnt from doing makeovers is how empowering it was for a woman to change on the outside to then be able to evolve on the inside. Because sometimes we need that exterior push to be perceived in a different way in order for that inner voice to come out and say, this is actually me now.
From Mamma Mia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter, the podcast for people who like to lean into other people's stories. How many people in the world are there that inspire women they've never met to blurt out, I just really want her to grab my boobs? I can only think of one, Trinny Woodall. And she used to grab women's boobs for a living with her on-screen partner in fashion makeovers, Susannah. Their books and TV series, What Not to Wear, became really iconic in the 2000s. I'm sure you remember it. They'd accost women on the street and sort of bossily, but with enormous affection, tell them why their clothes were rubbish. And then they would make helpful suggestions about what these women should wear instead. And the women were always grateful and they always looked better. Not necessarily skinnier, which is what so many makeover shows are about, but they just stood more upright and they seemed more confident. And you could literally see the spring in their step and the sparkle in their eye as they walked away. I first noticed the effect Trinny had on women in real life when she came into Mamma Mia to do an interview with another one of our podcasts, You Beauty. Because Trinny is in the beauty business now. She has a makeup company. It's called Trinny London. And she launched it in 2017 at the age of 53 when her show ended its run on TV. Her income dried up pretty much overnight and she had to reinvent herself. Now, here are some things about Trinny I didn't know. She tried for a really long time to get pregnant before having her daughter Lyla when she was 40, and all the rounds of IVF she had to have sparked early menopause at 45, which really knocked her around. Then after 10 years of marriage, Trinny divorced Lyla's father, Johnny, in 2008, but they remained really good friends until tragically, Johnny, who battled with addiction and other issues, took his own life in 2014. She's had a lot of ups and downs in her life, like most women, but Trinny is really resourceful. She said recently when asked about her money problems, I rented out my own house and rented a smaller one instead, and the difference paid the mortgage. I sold off my wardrobe. I've always been very independent. I've had periods of real extravagance and times when money has been tight, so I manage. So what does it look like when you have to rebuild yourself and your brand, when you're already really famous and you're in your 50s, but your fame doesn't pay the bills? Amid all the flurry of excitement when Trinny came into the office and all the dozens of interviews she did when she was in Australia to promote Trinny London, when she came into the Mamma Mia studio for our interview, she was interesting and engaging, and she was really grounded and incredibly warm. She settled in for a very intimate and surprising conversation that stayed with me ever since. You're going to love this interview. Here's Trinny Woodall. Watching you come into the office and there was so much excitement. It's a very particular excitement though, because women want you to touch them and tell them fix them. Mm-hmm. I've not seen that before. It must be something that you're very used to. How do you handle that?
I think of all the things that I've got in my career that I love the most is the fact that women find it easy to be intimate with me quickly. And so that to me is, building a business is a fantastic thing, but to have that is a very special thing because you know then that a woman trusts you. She might not have met you, but there's something about what you're talking to her about generally that she trusts you. And I think when Susannah and I did our show, and it was quite a contrary show, and there was a lot of, are they being tough? But there was also some really raw emotional moments in the show. And especially actually a show we did here, there was a very raw emotional moment. But sometimes touching a woman is something they really need, And so when they see how when you touch other women, it brings them to life, they might somehow subconsciously feel, I want some of that, and you feel that. And on days when I'm sort of a projector, where I'm feeling it. So I'm nearly at the end of my drinking water because I've had sort of 18-hour days for a few days. But I can, when I'm really flat, be pulled back up with my energy by the women in the room. And so coming in there, I sensed those women were excited, and it gives me that sense of joy. And it took me to 55 to get to this. There was a lot of bumpy roads, but I'm very, very content in that relationship that I have with certain women. I love it.
You're right about the fast intimacy and the sense that people feel very connected to you. And even before social media and your very savvy and beautifully intimate use of social media in its best form, like the videos that you do in your bathroom and the way, people feel that they're with you all the time. How do you then have boundaries? Because it can become quite porous. It's kind of like you don't always want to touch someone. And I imagine the waitress at the restaurant or the person in the shop, sometimes you just want to live your life, I would imagine.
It's interesting because I got to being known when I was already a grown-up. I wasn't a teenager getting to be known. And because I'd had a career where I hadn't known what I wanted to do, so it took me quite a long time to get to. It wasn't that overnight, it was quite a build. I remember something that my agent told me a long time before when I first started to sell a lot of books and things. So anyone who comes up to you has read something that they have spent £15 buying, or they have watched a show in which in some way they've paid to watch that show. And they are the reason why I have a home I can buy. Or, there's that. And I sort of, not just that I remember that, but I feel if I'm out and about, I never usually get somebody who will really hassle me. If I'm out and about with Lyla, and
Your
it's
daughter.
just like I only have a few hours with Lyla, and quite a few people come up, and somebody might cross about, I might just say, look, I'm with my daughter. I just need to spend some time with her. But if I'm on my own and I'm out and about, I don't, I'm fine with it, actually. I'm very fine with it. Yeah.
How does Lyla process it? She's obviously used to it. She's grown up with it.
Yeah, but she was very, very, when she was really little, I had one sort of quite, being known on the high street in England. And then when she was sort of got to an age where she was 5 or 6 or might have an awareness, I wasn't doing that much TV anymore. And I had, stopped doing TV in England. So I wasn't in the newspaper every week, and I was doing TV abroad. And Susannah and I actually kind of loved that because we had our life in England with our kids, but we weren't in gossip magazines and things. And we would be making our money abroad and then coming back. And the downside was we traveled a lot. So after 3 years, it was too much. And then, I started building the business. So there was probably that time between, 5 and maybe 13 when I very occasionally there would be, press or something, but she just never ever noticed it. And I think the time when I really worried about it is her father died under he killed himself, and it was a difficult circumstance.
How old was she?
And she was 10.
Oh.
And I remember I called up the editor of a newspaper and I said, look, please just don't, because I wasn't ready for her to understand he'd killed himself. I said, please don't print he killed himself, because he fell to his death. And so I said, just can you please do that? Because I don't want her to see anything. I felt immeasurably protective that she, I would in my own time decide how I would tell her what had happened. And I didn't want that not to be in my control.
How'd that go?
I had an amazing woman called Julia Samuel who has written some incredible books on grief, and really amazing. And she's kind of very well known in England for helping people through that period. And yeah, when Johnny died, my sister came round. So the police came to tell me, and my sister came round, and Lyla was at school. And so by the time she came back from school, there were some other people in the house. And my sister called Julia and said, can you come round? So Julia came round and came to talk to me. And she said, just for now, tell her he had a heart attack in his head. So she came back and she couldn't understand why there were people in the house. And I knew I had to kind of get her upstairs, and I wanted to get her upstairs in the bed. So we lay down in bed. And she said, what is it? What is it? That sort of sensing. And I said, Dad has died, darling. And she screamed like an animal. And the whole house heard it. And like the friends of mine who were in the house just remember that. They all remember that sort of animal scream. And she didn't straight away say what happened. And then, I just sort of said, he fell and he had a heart attack in his head. And then slowly over a few months, she kind of found out a bit, and then I told her a bit more, And I think it's like Julia was really, you need to tell her honestly, straight up. And I want to protect her, but I understand if you tell the story incorrectly at the beginning, the profound effect in a few years when a child is lied to and then discovers something else is more disturbing. So it's like navigating something you've never had to navigate in your life before is really difficult. So I'm very protective of her, and she's quite grown up in some ways, Lyla. She's very wise. And what I find staggeringly surprising, I come from one of 6 children, and I'm the youngest child from 2 marriages, and I grew up with a lot of insecurities. And Lyla she has an older brother, but he's 10 years older, a half brother. So she's grown up sort of as an only child. And I might say to her, do you feel okay about this? Or, and she said, I feel great. And I go, I know you do. Because she's not bravadoing saying, I feel great in something. She's like, I feel great. And I know that I look at her in awe because I sort of know that overwhelming arc of her whole life. And I think, thank you, God, or whoever, that she's feeling okay about herself and that she loves life and that she has friends and she feels normal, Yeah.
I have a number of friends who've lost their partners to suicide, and I've heard it said that it's the grief of it is like a knot that you can never untangle in a way, because the person who did it is also the person that you lost.
Yeah.
So it's very complex in the way that you process it. It's not like another form of grief when someone might die of cancer or they might die in an accident.
Yeah.
Is that something that you have unknotted over time for yourself?
I think I wasn't with Johnny anymore. I actually was already with the person I'm with now. But we were good friends, and there was times in Johnny's life where he wasn't that well. He suffered from addiction. And when he was well, he was like my best friend. And when he wasn't well, I wanted to protect Lyla tremendously from that. So it was really, there were some times when, he'd be around me and I'd be like, like this, because I could just feel that unwellness in him. And there were other times when I never thought, I wish we'd get back together, but I just thought, when he's well, he's such a great guy, and very loved. And
the father of your child.
And the father of my child. And so I think grief, however somebody dies, there are those traditional classic stages of grief. And, you go through sort of pain, you go through anger, you go through lots of things, and you do get to a place of acceptance. And with suicide, you might think it's a harder way to get to a place of acceptance, but I know there was nothing I could have done to stop it. And I think that's something a lot of people struggle with. And, because there had been many times before where friends had said, you have to let go here because whatever happens, you won't be responsible for that. And nothing happened. And Johnny would always say to me, Trinny, 99% of everything you worry about never happens. And I use that so much in my life because it's such a good bit of advice. And ironically, the one person who tells me that is that 1%, which is an incredibly ironic thing in life. But I always, whenever Lyla was upset, I'd say, what did Dada say, darling? He said, 99% of everything you just, you shouldn't worry about because it never happens.
It's good advice for people with anxiety.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears for a second. You and Susannah were such an iconic brand as a duo, extraordinarily iconic. At what age did you decide that had run its course? Because you've basically created a whole other brand in Trinny London and Trinny without Susannah.
Yeah.
How did that process unfold? Because I imagine there were times and there were probably people who said to you, you're much stronger together, and how do you build a brand apart from her?
I think when you have such a strong duo, there's this yin and yang where you probably subconsciously suppress parts of your personality you don't think are as strong as the other ones. So Susannah, I always felt, was more humorous, more funnier and cozier. You know, those were her attributes, and always polite to people. I would be like a bit prickly. If things weren't going right, I might be prickly, and she'd always be really polite, but then say, "Oh, that's such a silly person."
So you had like a good cop, bad cop dynamic,
bad cop dynamic,
different.
and she was like always, you know, a bit lazy, and I was always a bit too. She'd always say that I was acceleration, she was the brake. So we had that for a long time, and it worked until the very end. It worked incredibly well. So when I then started by myself, and we both equally agreed she would write her book, I would just start to see she knew I always wanted to start a brand and start my own baby. She knew that because I was always a little bit more business-minded than Suze. So I think it was quicker than I thought that I discovered this whole bit of me. And I think I was ready. You know, I think that there's many decades we're not ready. And I just hit the right decade. I turned 50. And I remember a girlfriend saying to me, when you turn 50, you won't care anymore. And it was something that I thought, but I don't think that's going to be right for me, you know. And it was literally to the day, I just didn't give a shit.
What did you stop caring about?
I stopped caring. I sort of cared. I never really cared hugely what people thought of me when I felt I needed to say something that I thought was going to help them. But I cared about stuff that I sort of carried, you know, other people's feelings, that kind of stuff, which then becomes a bit burdenous. And so I just didn't. And it was really freeing. And then when I went to Facebook in like 2015, and I was just chatting to them. They said, look, Trinny, we're looking for people just to create content and stuff. And you knew that, you know, you'll come from TV, so just go back home. And I remember being in the Facebook office, and I picked up my phone and I started filming. And these women came. I was like, Trinny, is that you? From, you know, like, have you come out the cobwebs? So I went home and I started doing these films. And these women started coming who had followed me before. And then these other women came and like, who are you? I quite like what you're saying. And, you know, I just thought, I love this. And I think what I loved, there's lots of things I loved about it. It's helped me grow. It's helped me discover, you know, I never thought I was funny, and people are amused by me, and I love that. It's just me being me. And sometimes I don't intentionally be funny, but I'm not like, they're not laughing at me, and I make them feel lighthearted. So I love that. I love that I can do that, because I never ever thought I'd be able to do that.
It's a type of power, isn't it? It's a lovely type of power.
Such a nice type of power.
Yeah.
So that's kind of joyous. And I feel, because everyone's been through a lot, but I feel I'm slightly less abrasive as a person now. I'm still a very hard taskmaster. I have a team like you here. You have double. I have 50 people who work with me. And, you know, I can be really like, why isn't this happening? And you know, I think my hardest thing is if I go into fear-based stuff, you know, if I suddenly think that things aren't working and they're beyond my control, that's when I become a little bit like the old me, and I'm a bit abrasive. But it's nice, that evolution. I mean, you must find that, having gone from magazines and everything to working in this tech world where lots of people are younger, and on one hand you're the mother hen, and on the other hand you're this woman in tech with a experience, as opposed to Emily Weiss with one day to the next cool tech girl, you know. I mean, worked very hard, brilliant, inspiring entrepreneur, but you know, didn't have a history of 20 years in magazines, or, you know. So you and I have this kind of, you know, big history of other industries and things. And
also coming out from behind other mediums. You know, I worked in magazines and then very briefly in television, which was a disaster. And you worked in television for so long, but there are so many people between you and your audience.
Yeah.
Executives that want to give notes, producers, all of these people. And what I can see you enjoying so much, and what's so enjoyable as your audience, is stripping all that back and just having you and your phone in the bathroom.
Yeah, and the freedom of not having somebody say, let's edit her this way because then it will be better yin and yang, or let's, you know, make them do this show because it's in their contract, all that kind of stuff. I think if you can get to a stage where you control the output, and the output is, you know, even... We do lots of different shows now between Trinny London and Trinny Woodall. So we do the Rethink Your Routine, which is like a happening. We go into a square, we take the makeup, we just say to women, we're going to be there at 12, come and join us. And we have these experiences which we create in a flash without two editors and a producer and a director deciding what reality should look like. And so I love that. And then we have we do a show called the Trinny Takeover Show, which is my idea now of what a makeover should be. It's a joyous
running into Zara.
little run into
Fabulous.
Zara, do some makeup, make the woman feel good, not really know much about her before, don't do a tremendous amount of research, on the ground running. So that kind of works. And then we have one we haven't done very much, but I love the idea of it, which is it's called What the Tea. And it's us in our office. And we did a few of them, but it took so long. I'm sure you know here about resources. Should they go to this or that?
Yeah.
And if I had more resources, I would say that's a really important show to do, because we did one day live on Instagram and we did 12 hours live on Instagram.
Oh my God.
Okay. And we had set up, and Nisha, who's here today, ran it, and we had a bit of every single thing of what every single person does in the whole business for 12 hours on Instagram. And it was unbelievable, the audience we had through the day, and people asking questions. And we said, we want you to watch this so you can see what kind of careers are like, what the jobs are like, what you can do, what it really takes to do this kind of job, how we're growing as a business, because women are really vested in us. So women who buy the product, are part of the Trinny tribe. There's this community. So we want you in on the community. And they recognize half our office. And I love the fact that they can go into any pop-up environment of Trinny London and that's Chloe and that's Nisha and that's Dido. It's comforting.
It's an insatiable beast, the creation of the content, though, as part of being a business owner now.
Yeah.
And I think that, for people like you and I, that's what we do. But it's hard. We run courses to help ladies startups and women who want to start their own businesses, and social media and creating content is an expectation, whether you own a restaurant, you're a caterer, you're selling, foot lotion, whatever it is that you're doing. That idea of content creation, it's quite a lot.
I mean, I think it's quite a lot, and it is really important, because we can see between us the amount of outlets that have closed in which you could get promotion before for your business. So magazines, editorials, articles, so many.
You go direct to consumer now.
And so many of your decisions are made by looking through your Instagram feed. I kind of think, I look at that terrible thing of how many hours do I spend on my phone, which is probably about 4 hours a day, but that's because I do all my emails on my phone and everything, really. I look at all my accounts on everything. But, if I look at the fact that I've got sort of very little time, so where am I going to get information? So it will be Google searching, or it will be Instagram to chat to my friends, or to find out stuff, or to see what new design might be out there, or it'll be the Zara app, or Facebook. And that's kind of who has my time on my phone. So for people starting a business, there is tremendous opportunity, and it might seem daunting. And for me, the advice I always give is, really don't be worried by a pretty picture. Cast that out your mind. Stop using any filters. Just chat. And if you can't chat, just find somebody who can chat about what you do.
But it's always younger than us. And, I'm 48. I just turned 48. And there's part of that, and I don't use filters either, and I, will be in my bathroom in a towel with it, and I don't care. But I think Zoe's still in her 30s, and I think that giving no shits only comes as you head fast towards 50.
Yeah, I think, you see, you're still in your 40s, so you can look back. I've just a decade ahead of you, so I actually don't probably remember.
Well, it's also very different when we were that age, really, really different. I was reading Gia Tolentino's book. She's an American writer, and she's written this great book of essays, and she talks about this idea of female optimization and how we're all so obsessed with beauty now, right? Yeah. So when I was younger and when you were younger, I don't know, I used to get piece of makeup from the chemist or from the supermarket, and there was a few brands. There was like the Revlons and the Maybellines, or there was like the fancy Estee Lauders and the Clarins. Now, nothing gives me more joy than wandering around a Mecca, wandering around a Sephora, looking through your products, looking online. And Gia's point is that what used to be something that we did to please men, in quote marks, things like wearing makeup, hair removal, has now almost been rebranded as self-care. Okay. And as a feminist, I get that, but it does feel like self-care to me. Like, I suppose in one way you could say, well, it's a big scam to get us to spend money just under a different guise of female empowerment. But I find that the more stressed I am, the more pleasure I get from buying skincare and buying makeup, and I genuinely love it. Mm-hmm. So you were very, in terms of when you went into launching a beauty company, that's obviously something you felt in the zeitgeist.
I mean, I think I always felt it. So I've done makeovers since 97, and I always felt the power of a woman seeing herself again in a way she could identify and recognize herself. So not total metamorphosis, but one where she'd just been like an old coin that been polished up.
Yeah.
And to give herself permission to know it's okay, because some women feel guilty to do it, or they feel it's not. There's more important, causes in the world than just being vain. I really believe strongly, like you, I think it's self-care. And I think what I learnt from doing makeovers for 20 years before I started Trinny London is how empowering it was for a woman to change on the outside to then be able to evolve on the inside. Because sometimes we need that exterior push to be perceived in a different way in order for that inner voice to come out and say, this is actually me now. And when I was thinking, it came from, Trinny London came from me running around the world, wanting my makeup all in one place. I used to do the stacking. And even 10 years ago when I was here, I was speaking to Ray Morris, and she said, I remember, Trinny, I met you at the Hyatt, and we were just about to do a shoot, and you had this stack thing with the makeup in it. So it's like so old, you've had that idea so long, But I remember, I think the thing, when you talk about zeitgeist, because I've probably made over 3,000 women, all right, and they all tell me different things, but what they tell me about makeup and skincare is in a way the reason for all the elements of Trinny London. So they would go up to a beauty counter and think, that girl behind the counter I don't identify with. They got to a beauty counter and they would get their makeup done and go home and think, oh my God, I can't recreate that. They would go to the makeup counter, I just want a little foundation, not much more, and they go outside and there'd be orange. And there were lots of barriers within that environment to actually get something they wanted. And sometimes women didn't know what they wanted. There's stages in a woman's life where we might lose our confidence for a little bit. And so I thought, can I take makeup? So I knew I wanted to do cream base. I knew I wanted a woman literally to put her makeup on with her eyes closed, to have that ability to just kind of feel her face and put a bit of makeup on. I knew that I wanted to have it something that was beautiful, innately beautiful, that they could carry around, not to be burdened by a makeup bag, not to be controlled by something, because you'd have a big makeup bag and you'd then think, I'll take another bag, and that security around how much makeup do I need to feel good, and that you could just have this little stack and take it everywhere. So I love that.
Because the whole Kardashian look has made it seem you're hyperventilating. Yeah. I look at that and I think, and it's become a real look, right?
Yeah, it
and
has.
That it's like it's this homogenized form of beauty, which is in some ways exciting because it's disruptive. When we were younger, the supermodels didn't look like that, but it's still very homogenized and seems like it requires hours and hours of contouring and applying false lashes and it seems like you need to quit your job to do that.
Well, I think there are some women who can do it.
It's intimidating.
Quite quickly, but it's very regressive to me.
In what way?
I think that when you go back to those women doing it for their husbands, it's not that, but that kind of preparation, the kind of set, it would take them a while to become the peacock. And here we are 40 years later, and we've got a situation where it takes them a while to become what they feel is acceptable.
Yes,
and
it's quite
like
mask-like, isn't it?
I don't like that. I think it's not a great message. It's like I always skirt around it and be polite, but in my gut, I just feel, I do Botox and I've had filler once or twice and I do laser. I do that shit and that's my choice, but I don't filter myself. I don't pretend I haven't had stuff done. I don't wear a ton of makeup. And I don't judge people who do, but I just feel it takes a long time. It is that thing. It's like how I need to do all this to then be acceptable. So I might just be saying, because some people who don't know me at all might put in a view, well, oh, how can she sell makeup when, look, she's had Botox? And I just think, you don't really, that's kind of not a great educated assumption of something.
How do you cope with aging though? Because I look in the mirror and I'm looking to women who are just that little bit ahead of me to go, I'm looking at their faces and often people say, oh, you shouldn't ask whether someone's had Botox. And I don't do it to judge them. I just do it to try to understand what I should do and how I should go in these next 10, 15 years.
I think for me, my vanity stems entirely in not looking in the mirror and saying, oh, I look attractive, but not looking tired.
Yes.
It's all, everything so is about not looking tired. So, because if I look tired, half my energy goes in a flash. And it affects me internally so much. I don't look and think, it's not...
We're not trying to look sexy.
No, it's not.
No, I'm not trying to look young either.
No, it's just like, so what can I do? So the fact is, if you do a bit of Botox and if you have, a sort of lactic peel on your skin, it will glow and you'll feel untired. If you wear a nice under-eye concealer, which covers a dark circle, you'll feel untired. If you wear blusher, you'll feel fresh. These are things that I think are so easy to do. And, I've been through lots of decades. I went through the 80s where it was about the bronzer blush, the real fake tan. I did the real fake tan, orange, black eyeliner. And I look at a lot of those women because a lot of my customers are either those women or their daughters. And I love that mother-daughter moment because you and I, mothers and daughters. But I love the fact that the mothers introduce it to their daughters who they think they don't want them to go down a Kardashian route or they're girls who aren't wearing any makeup and they feel a little bit less confident than their friends. And then you have girls in their 20s who introduce their mums when they sort of think, Mum is stuck in a rut, let me buy her a makeover.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? I see so many women... You and Susannah were always not about men. It wasn't about appealing to men, which is funny because when I was in magazines at Cosmo and everything, it was all about trying to look sexy, ultimately for men.
Yeah.
But your makeovers were never about that. It was always about you. And not just, you were revolutionary in that sense because you were doing that decades before that idea of wanting to look better for yourself and the connection between how you look on the outside and how you feel on the inside. That was quite groundbreaking. And I feel like now, again, we're not trying to appeal to men. Like as we get older, we don't want to look hot. We don't want to get picked up. It's not the invisibility that we want to be catcalled in the street. It's losing touch with yourself. And I see that in my mother. I see that in a lot of my friends where you just...
But it's also, I think, being present. So I remember Susannah and I did this show once on ITV where we took upon these personas. So Susannah had prosthetics done to be a 70-year-old woman. And she remembers walking down Croydon High Street and people physically bumped into her because she just wasn't present to them. She was dressed in, we put her in slightly old-fashioned clothing and she had grey hair and she became invisible. And I think women go through menopause and they, I went through menopause at 45, so I went through quite early. And
what does that feel like?
For me, I think it's very different for different women. And when I analyse it, I think it has to do with body shape.
In what way?
Because this is my own analysis. If women are top heavy and have their fat around their breasts and their upper arm, I think they get more menopausal symptoms that are physical. I think they sweat more. I think they get night sweats more. I think that happens. I think if a woman is more bottom heavy, and she doesn't have that, her fat is distributed around her thighs. Her breasts are not such an active part of her body. And I think they don't get those physical symptoms so much, but maybe they therefore feel the emotional ones more. This is just I've spoken to many people around the world. Like there's an American woman called Dr. Erica Schwartz who wrote the hormone therapy and the intimacy guide. She's brilliant. And it's just about balancing out your hormones. But so for me, I got a bit low and I couldn't quite, and it was also at a time when I was separating from my partner and I was losing work I had. So there were many things to put it down to.
It can be very hard to unscramble that egg, can't it?
And
because
really,
in that life stage, your children might be leaving home, you have career changes.
So many things. And I also had... got to a stage where I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So, that was kind of where am I heading? So I think then my mother had breast cancer, so I went bioidentical hormones. I didn't do HRT. And I sort of took a while and then I found it. And I take now a lot of, I take magnolia flower, I take cherry blossom to sleep at night, I take sage for my mood and sort of hormone, hotness and stuff. So
does your skin change?
Skin changed a bit. I put on 2 stone, okay? And what was really interesting is I was very skinny in parts of my life, and my daughter's like this, eats like a pig, and everyone gets like, why are you so thin? But I also ran on raw energy, and during menopause, those energy levels slow down. So you just don't not metabolize your food. So I just did, and I just also met somebody by then, and I'd sit at home and not go out and just eat ice cream. I was happy. So I did, and I think I last weighed myself about 3 years ago. So that's kind of a nice thing, not to have, I never had an uncomfortable relationship with my body, and I met many women who have, so that's reinforced me never to go down that route, because it's so painful for women, so painful. But I have that comfort around my body. So going back to our original thing, if I look in the mirror and I feel really tired and run down, I'll think, okay, when did I last have Botox? And shall I go and have a little laser or a little peel or whatever? And then I'll go in the office and I'll be able to work with 20-year-olds and get in before they arrive and leave after they've gone home and have more energy than them. And they turn around and say, how do you have that energy?
Such a great insight, the idea of looking in the mirror and feeling tired, because there's that, thing, norepinephrine thing, I feel bad about my neck.
Yeah.
And I was thinking lately, I feel bad about my eyelashes because... why do I? But it made me realize I've been flicking through Instagram so much, and now the beauty aesthetic's changed and everyone's got eyelash extensions. Yeah. So I've never even considered that I have. I've never given much thought to my eyelashes.
Yeah.
But I can see how that works on us as a beauty standard changes.
Yes.
Now I feel like my bottom's too small, whereas I used to feel like my bottom's too big. But what we've been looking at has changed, and culturally, big bottoms are now the thing.
Funnily enough, I'd never feel my bottom was too small. Because I look at that fad and I think it's so disproportionate what the is going on.
And then people making their bottoms look bigger.
Yeah, it's insanity.
With filters.
It's like insanity. I'm just like, really? Whereas eyelashes, I'm with you. So eyelashes, I have extensions and I have them done one lash on one lash. They're a little C-curl. They're only 11 centimeters. I have quite long lashes anyway. And it's mainly, I don't want the faff of mascara. It's like, that's why it's taken so long for Trinny London to relaunch a mascara, because I haven't got an opportunity to test and test and test. But
because you don't need it.
Yeah, and then I'll just have lashes on and have, because when I do my lives, I don't have a filter and I don't have any makeup on at all. Scrubbing my face and everything. So I just feel a little lash is quite nice. You're looking at my lashes now thinking, how fake do they look or not?
No, because I was thinking before, they look really natural, so you obviously don't have them.
Yeah.
But they look amazing.
Yeah, they're good. If you ever come to London, Edie, she's great.
How are you finding running your own business after a lot of years of working for other people?
In a way,
you've always been self-employed in some way.
I've always been self-employed. And I think when you run your own business, and self-employed, I did this too, you don't necessarily take the time to think, oh my God, look how far it's come. And
never.
Never. But I did the other day, because I came in the office and we had moved office and got this lovely office, and then it's got busier and busier. In like 6 months, we might have to move again. But I came in the lift and they'd finally put up the sign, Trinny London, on the lift, okay? And I thought, oh. And then I came upstairs and we have a little pop-up in our HQ where women come and get makeovers done. So there's always Wednesday to Sunday, this team of women. So I always come out of the lift and they're really excited. And there's this kind of, hi! And I just think, oh, I'm so f***ing lucky.
Yeah.
Because it's like that energy, hi, and then I walk in the office. But I think the thing I find hardest, and you will really, I hope, identify with this, is when we were really small, I knew every single thing that every single person was doing. And if I heard somebody have a conversation, I'd say, actually, can you think about that, please, as well as that? I had to have my ear everywhere. So now, physically, the office is much bigger. There's groups of marketing and new product development who sits next to me, and my assistant and tech and whatever. So there's meetings now that don't need me. But I'll just sit in a meeting sometimes. I'll just pop in and just, if I got a moment, just say, okay, so what are you talking about, And then there's this other thing that, I would want every single email that was relevant to me that copied on my email. But now my inbox is like 300 a day or 400 a day if I do that. It's insane. And then if I go home and I haven't cleared it to like 50 emails, that's when I actually feel a bit stressed. That's what stresses me the most, because I then know that people are waiting to see what I think about something before they move on, and it prevents the business moving on. And then you need to be grown up enough to delegate and say, do I trust that I've employed this person to do this job, and can they do it without me? And if they do it 90% of how I want to do it, that's okay. And then on the other upside, you employ somebody who knows more than you about something, and you think, what a relief that they're in the meeting and not me, learning on the fly when they've known it for 10 years. So there's an incredible excitement. I mean, you and I could have a conversation about this for hours, because we are of a certain age running a business with predominantly women and men in their 20s and a few in their 30s. And literally I am there with one other person, two other people in a thing of in fact, now because my COO's just turned 50, but there's three of us who are the same age. Then there's two 35-year-olds and a 32-year-old, a 30-year-old, and then everyone else is under 30.
What's the biggest difference that you notice between people our age and women under 30?
You know what, actually, I think there's no difference, because I think it's about your work ethic. So I think it's a fallacy. I really do, because a lot of people talk about millennials, they're sort of, they have a different work ethic, whatever. What I find is when somebody's in their 20s, like I have this thing in my office that we feed them. Okay, so you come in, you can get your toast and whatever, but also we do 3 big supermarket shops a week, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there'll definitely be food for you to have lunch, and then Friday we order out. So
Why do you do that? That's interesting.
Because I think if people are hungry, they feel flat, because I know I do. If I haven't eaten enough, your blood sugar level's a bit wobbly. And I think it's a nurturing thing, a kitchen. So a kitchen is quite a central focus in our office. Can be smelly occasionally. We've had some rules now about no cooking of food between 10 and 12, because some people are vegetarians and they smell meat and it becomes tricky. But I think it's important. And so those people in their 20s, you take a while for your brain to wake up, but their brain wakes up by 10. So I sort of say everyone apart from a new person coming in. If we have a new person coming in, we have a stand-up. So we all go around the room, do an exercise, talk about what we do, and everyone gets to know everyone, even if it's a lot of people, but they have that instant feeling of it. And then by 10, I ask everyone to be in. And some people who come in at sort of 8:30 like to come in early when the office is less boisterous, and they might leave at 6. But the people who come in at 10, I see their brains slowly waking up. They have definitely that lull at 2. But 7 o'clock, they're diligently at their desk doing something, doing it. And they might be going out that evening. So it's like they work as hard as Feds, my 32-year-old operations manager, or Mark, my CEO. Well, Mark works unbelievably hard, my CEO. So I don't judge people by the decades in which they were born. I see people by slightly the age they are and how they work. Yeah, it's a long-winded answer, but I think there's too much easy labeling going on.
Those younger women are pretty freaked out by the idea of getting older. It's funny, I find that the people who are most stressed are the people who are turning 30.
Do you?
Yeah. Women who are turning 30 tend to be very stressed. I think that's because there's a lot of, checklist stuff that goes on in your head around that age, where you are. What would you tell younger women are the best things about getting older?
This decade too shall pass. My 20s was my hardest decade.
Same.
It was
It was a cluster.
So relieved I'm not there.
Yes.
Oh, the torment, the turmoil, the relationships, the friendship breakups. I mean, yeah.
It gets easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that kind of 20s for me was that. 30s was discovering my career. 40s was becoming a mother and complicated relationships. 50s is feeling streamlined in what I want in my life. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for our chat. I loved it. I could talk to you forever.
I could talk to you forever too.
And Trinny London is just fantastic. I'm wearing it.
I know, you've got a bit of queen on.
I do. It's exactly right. You're well picked. And now I'm going to get eyelash extensions. So that's... Okay, so since meeting Trinny and having that conversation, I have gone deep. I've really immersed myself in Trinny because I've found someone in her that shares my absolute joy in fashion and in having fun with clothes. And even though she is in the beauty industry now, and I love her products too, she gave me a few and I've been using them all the time. They're really, really good quality. And you can find them at trinnylondon.com. The videos that she does on her Instagram, which I think is just at Trinny Woodall, and you can find some more of her videos on YouTube. She does these closet confessions where she takes you inside her closet and it teaches you all these things about, like, one might be about blazers and one might be about sequins, and guess which one's my favourite. She'll show you in her bathroom when she's putting makeup on, and she's just the word authentic's overused, but I don't know, into life and having so much fun with makeup and clothes and really conveying the joy of all that. I've learnt so much and I've really changed the way I dress since diving deep and becoming hooked on Trinny. I now do an outfit of the day like she does as a way to sort of try to showcase as many lady startups as I can. I do that on my Instagram. And I've watched all of her videos. It's just really inspiring. This episode of No Filter was produced by Rachel Hart. I'm Mia Friedman. You can find me on Instagram if you want to see my outfits of the day at Mia Friedman, and I'll see you on No Filter next week.